Let's cross up to Queensland now and catch up with the leader and founder of One Nation, Senator Pauline Hanson, joins us. Thanks for joining us again, Pauline Hanson. Are you reassured or alarmed when you hear medical experts give us that matter-of-fact explanation about where we're at and what we need to prepare for?
Oh, look, it's matter of fact. I'm not a medical expert by any means, and listen to what they're saying. You must take it on board. My concern is for the state of the economy and what it's going to do with people, especially those people in businesses, sole traders, people who have shut down their businesses, whether they will ever open up again, and when they do, will they be able to get the supplies that they need? I think, the really tough times we're yet to face.
Yeah, I think it's just terrible what's happening when you see people lining up to get unemployment benefits, to get welfare. Bad enough people have just lost their jobs suddenly. There are other people, of course, who have lost their dream of a small business that they've spent, obviously, a lot of capital and a lot of their lives establishing and essentially been killed off by this government action to quell a pandemic.
Well, you are right, Chris. Look, One Nation and myself and Malcolm Roberts, we've supported the government's package to actually prop up the economy and give people the help that they need, but is it going to be enough? As the doctor just said, this, before they find a vaccine, could be 18 months to 2 years away. Now, are we going to keep the country shut down for that period of time till we do? Because by the sounds of it, they'll have to do it, because what's the whole point of shutting it down now if you don't have a vaccine for it? You know, shutting the borders, I think, is over the top, but the states are concerned that if they have a pandemic in their state, then they're going to have to provide the hospital beds for people, which they haven't got. But the federal government will prop them up and help with it. But I think closing the borders, I can understand closing the borders to the country, but closing the borders between states, I have an issue with that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Obviously, you were one of the first to say we should stop flights coming in from China and cutting off international visitors as a response to the pandemic. But your own state of Queensland is really aggressively blocking off its borders now. What is it that troubles you about that? And should the federal government step in and say that this isn't really in keeping with the Federation?
Look, I don't believe it's necessary. If you've got people congregated in the southeast of Queensland who actually have the coronavirus, you know, what stops them from travelling up to North Queensland? What's the difference between the southeast corner to North Queensland? So people still be able to travel across the state. The same as, you know, we need freight, we need people. Of course, they're letting workers through emergency services, and they say they're going to let freight through. But we have AusVeg is concerned, are they going to get their product through? Because they need the seedlings. And I was talking to an outlet that sells product seeds. They said they can't even get the seeds. A lot of people now buying the plants to grow their own food at home. So, you know, they can't keep up with the demand that's needed there. So I just can't see the point in closing the borders in each state. We are here for the amount that we have infected in the state. Now, most of the infections are undetected. People don't know they're carrying it. If we really care about the people, then, okay, older Australians, as the doctor said, over 70, if you have respiratory problems, if you have asthma, those conditions, fine, you self-isolate and you make sure you are responsible for your own actions. But to shut down the whole country as we are, and I understand what you're saying, that it's being spread more and more, but we had 900 people that died last year in Australia from the flu. We've had 8 deaths, and that's a crying shame. But I just think, or aren't we being told exactly the extent of how serious this is? And you must remember, Italy has been through winter. So in winter time, a lot of the Chinese were over there skiing in Italy, and so they spread the virus. We are coming out of our summer months. It may, as the doctor said, it may grow coming into the winter months.
Well, that's it. We're facing the flu season, so presumably we're going into a more difficult time. Are you saying that the government's overreacted? I mean, we all know there's a horrible balance here between slowing the pandemic, slowing the virus, and just killing off the economy. Are you saying they've overreacted?
In my opinion, yes, I think they have. There is, you know, when we have people get off the planes and they actually are tested and for their temperature. Now, that should be done in more places to test people if their temperature is up. rather than just letting go through. I've had people say they get off the international flights, they're coming into the country, they're not tested, as what happened with the cruise ship. They should have been tested as a virus to ensure that they don't get on public transport and they actually are self-isolating. I also want to know, are we still bringing in migrants from overseas and the refugees? Are we bringing them into the country, which I haven't been told? Well, have our borders been closed to everyone?
We do know that anyone coming into the country has to self-isolate. We also know that we've got nearly 2,000 infections in this country already. Obviously, if this were to get out of control, if we were to see that double and grow exponentially, there would be thousands of Australians, especially elderly Australians, who would end up in critical care and many would die. So, I mean, obviously, we have to have a very, very strong response to this.
I understand what you're saying, but in some cases, like you're shutting down beauty parlours, public transport, that's still it's still working, isn't it? So you can get on trains, you can get on buses. So it's a joke as far as I'm concerned. If you're serious about it, and I know people need public transport, but if you're saying that people can't go to the beach because they're crowded on a beach, yet you can get in a crowded train or a bus, give me a break, okay? I think it's just, you know, and you're shutting down businesses that, you know, I don't believe need to be shut down. I think it needs to be a measured approach by all means, but people are losing jobs, and out of this, they're going to lose possibly their homes and the incomes. I think we're in for a total disaster. How I see this, how it's going to end up. And I feel sorry for those poor people out there.
Just getting back to the states closing off their borders, do they have the constitutional power to do that?
I believe they do. The last time they did it was in the early 1900s when we had a flu epidemic in the early 1900s. Queensland closed their borders then at that time. But look, just pass on a bit of advice. I spoke to a Professor Ian Brighthope today. He said, you know, people can take a bit of self-protection. Sunshine is fantastic. We all need vitamin D. And he believes that if people took vitamin D and vitamin C, it would help their system, their immune system. He's been trying to advise the government with regards to this. This man has 40 years experience in medicine, plus also he teaches medicine. So he's involved with two medical institutions. I'll be following up what he says. He says the documentation, paperwork is there to back this up through the UK journals and medical journals. So, you know, all I'm saying is, you know, it wouldn't hurt if people don't get enough sunshine. So if you're going to self-isolate, you need that sunshine. As the previous guest said,
get out for a walk. Get out for a walk. Yeah.
Off the germs.
Just before we run out of time,
you've got to get that sunshine.
We know China has been culpable here. We know this virus originated in Wuhan. We know that the Chinese authoritarian communist regime tried to suppress not the disease but the warnings about the disease. So thanks to them, it got a head start, and it certainly hasn't helped the rest of the world. But you've written today that there should be some sort of retaliation against China, and there's nothing that we could or should do, is there, except demand better of them?
Well, of course we need to demand better of them. It's a communist country and they don't believe they need to answer to the rest of the world. You know, they want to play on the world stage and they want to send their goods to us. But, you know, in such a thing as this, with this pandemic that's happened and it came out of China, and we must say, yes, it did come out of China. They are responsible for this and they need to take responsibility for it. But this has happened before with all the animals that they have in the wet markets, and that's where it actually started, because their hygiene is not to the standard that we are, yet we still buy their product.
Yep.
I just want Australia to wake up to this, and I want us to actually become that industry manufacturing country that we were. Don't rely on China to supply us the goods, and I hope that we actually learn from this, and that yet industries and manufacturing go to supply our own needs.
Pauline Hanson, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, Pauline Hanson there. When it comes to our own national self-reliance, this will be one of the lessons learned in this country and many others around the world. We're going to learn a lot of lessons out of this coronavirus pandemic, but first we've got to get through it.